For decades, the world believed James Dean's death was a tragic accident, just another Hollywood star gone too soon. But after 70 years, new evidence has surfaced, and it changes everything. His fatal crash wasn't just a twist of fate. It was the result of ignored warnings, mechanical failures, and hidden truths buried by people who had everything to lose. The real story? It's darker, more disturbing, and far more human than the legend ever told. And once you hear it, you'll never see James Dean the same way again. Before the fame, before the films, James Dean was just a quiet boy from Marion, Indianapolis, sensitive and misunderstood. His father chased stability, moving the family to California for a better life. But James didn't find comfort there. His world collapsed when his mother, the only person who truly understood him, died of cancer when he was just 9. That kind of loss doesn't just hurt, it rewires a person. From that moment on, James was searching. Not just for success, but for meaning, connection, and a way to express the pain he carried silently. While other kids focused on grades or sports, he watched the world with a raw intensity, waiting for a place he could finally belong. James Dean didn't stand out in a classroom. His grades were average, his focus inconsistent, and his teachers rarely saw anything special. But that's because they were looking in the wrong places. What couldn't be measured on paper was his emotional depth, something that later made him magnetic on screen. At first, he tried to follow the expected path, enrolling in Santa Monica College to study pre-law. It didn't last. The courtroom wasn't his stage. Acting called to him, not just as a career, but as survival. Against his father's wishes, he transferred to UCLA and switched his major to drama. That choice caused a deep rift at home, but James didn't care. He had found the one thing that allowed him to channel everything he felt, but couldn't say. And when he landed a major role in a Shakespeare production, beating out hundreds of other students, it became clear. The lost, quiet boy from Indiana had something Hollywood didn't know it needed. James Dean didn't break into Hollywood with a bang but with persistence. He started small. A Pepsi commercial here, a background role there. But even in those brief moments on screen, something about him felt different. He wasn't polished, but he was real. That rawness caught the attention of the right people. He moved to New York, studied under Lee Strasberg at the legendary Actors Studio, and embraced method acting with brutal honesty. Dean didn't just perform emotion, she lived them. Directors noticed. So did audiences. He wasn't acting like the others. He was exposing something fragile and electric. As he took on darker, more controversial roles in off-Broadway productions, Hollywood couldn't look away. He wasn't safe, he wasn't predictable, and that's exactly why he became their next obsession. Behind the camera, James Dean was even more complex than the characters he played. Rumors swirled about his private life, but no one ever seemed to have the full picture. That mystery only grew after his death until one of his closest friends, William Bast, revealed that their relationship had crossed into something more intimate. It was a quiet but powerful confession that shattered the simple narratives Hollywood preferred. Dean's romantic life wasn't black and white. He dated women, some well-known, others more private, but also formed deep emotional bonds with men. In the 1950s, this wasn't something you talked about, especially not in Hollywood. But those close to him knew he was navigating desires and connections that didn't fit into society's boxes. His refusal to label himself made him even harder to pin down and even more intriguing to the public. It wasn't just about who he loved. It was about how he defied expectation, even in the most personal parts of his life. James Dean didn't just become famous, became a symbol. His breakout role in East of Eden showed audiences a new kind of masculinity, wounded, vulnerable, desperate to be understood. It wasn't clean or heroic, it was honest. But it was rebel without a cause that changed everything. As Jim Stark, Dean gave voice to an entire generation of teenagers who felt lost, angry, and ignored. He wasn't just acting, he was reflecting a truth that hadn't been seen on screen before. The way he moved, spoke, even stayed silent, it all hit like lightning. Suddenly, James Dean wasn't just an actor. He was a movement, but that fame came fast and heavy. He couldn't go anywhere without being recognized. The pressure was relentless. Everyone wanted something from him: studios, fans, the media, and underneath it all, he was still that emotionally fragile kid trying to make sense of his place in the world. James Dean called it Little Bastard, a sleek silver Porsche 550 Spider built for the racetrack, not public streets. It looked fast, dangerous, untouchable, just like him. But under the hood, it was a ticking time bomb. Mechanics warned him about faulty brakes and unstable steering. Friends told him not to drive it. Even veteran racers urged caution. But Dean ignored them all. He was drawn to danger, almost like he needed it. That car wasn't just a machine, it was a statement. It matched his rebellion, his recklessness, his refusal to slow down. But what he didn't know or didn't care to admit was that Little Bastard was barely road safe. Every mile he drove it brought him closer to a line he wouldn't be able to cross back from. The official story painted it as a tragic accident: 2 cars, 1 wrong turn, and a young star gone in an instant. But the truth is far more tangled. On that September day in 1955, Dean was speeding down a remote California highway in Little Bastard, despite warnings and the car's known issues. Coming the other way was Donald Turnipseed, a college student in a basic Ford sedan. Visibility was low, the intersection poorly marked, and in a split second, their lives collided. For years, many blamed Turnipseed. But recent investigations show that blame wasn't so simple. Dean's car wasn't just hard to handle, it may have been mechanically failing as he approached the bend. And Turnipseed had little time to react. It wasn't one person's fault, it was a perfect storm. Speed, mechanical failure, poor road design, and human error all crashing together at once. The kind of disaster no one sees coming until it's too late. In the aftermath of the crash, the public was fed a clean, tragic narrative, but behind closed doors, something far messier was unfolding. Eyewitness accounts were vague and some later changed. Key details disappeared from police reports. And whispers began to surface that local authorities may have downplayed mechanical issues or driver responsibility to avoid lawsuits, bad press, or damaging the image of Hollywood's rising star. Even the car itself vanished under suspicious circumstances after the crash, adding fuel to decades of conspiracy. The more investigators dug, the more questions emerged. Why weren't Dean's mechanical warnings documented? Why did reports conflict on the car's speed? And why did some involved parties suddenly stop speaking? It started to look less like a tragic accident and more like a story someone didn't want told. In the weeks leading up to the crash, James Dean wasn't just racing cars, was racing against his own demons. Friends noticed a restless energy, a reckless edge that went beyond youthful bravado. Whispers of substance use and emotional struggles circulated quietly, painting a picture of a man overwhelmed by the demands of sudden fame. His reckless driving may have been more than adrenaline, it could have been a desperate cry for control in a life spinning too fast. That day on the road wasn't just a collision of metal and flesh, it was the breaking point of a young man wrestling with fear, pain, and the weight of expectations. Understanding this adds a human, haunting layer to the tragedy, reminding us that behind the legend was a fragile soul who burned too bright, too fast, and paid the ultimate price. James Dean's story was never simple. For decades, his death was wrapped in mystery and myth, a tragic symbol of youth cut short. But now, with decades of new evidence and revelations, the shine has dimmed to reveal something more real and more painful. His legacy isn't just about rebellion or fame, it's a cautionary tale of risk, loss, and the fragile line between myth and truth. Dean's name still carries power, but it also carries a warning. Beneath the glamour, there were hidden struggles, dangerous choices, and a price no one could escape. And maybe that's the most important story of all.